and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I'm your host, Eric Fisher, and this is the show where we talk to the people behind the productivity. This week, I am sharing with you a conversation I had with Ryan Mcrae. Ryan is from the ADHD Nerd.com, and Ryan's been on the show, I believe, 3 times before. The first time to talk about ADHD itself. The second time we were talking about a year ago about resolutions and why you should make them. And a few months ago, Ryan came on and talked about taking a productivity retreat. This time, Ryan is on the show to talk about a Danish word known as Hygge, which has a lot to do with not always being on or productive or producing, I should say, because it can be very productive to not always be producing. Not only that, and talking about this time of year, these seasons, or this season that we are in, weather-wise, time of year-wise, when it comes to November and December, and even January and February. But we talk about how checklists can be involved in achieving that state of Hygge. So, I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. It's a pretty fun one, as you'll be able to see. This week it is my privilege, once again, to welcome back Ryan Mcrae to the show. Welcome back, Ryan.
Hey, Eric.
So, I had this crazy notion of having you come back to talk on almost this annual basis now. Mm-hmm. You notice? Like, yeah. You originally came on and we talked ADHD, and you were the first person to come on and talk that topic with me. I've had, since then, Eric Tivers, as well as,
I love Eric.
Why am I blanking on his name? The guy who had the book come out recently. Man, that's bad. It's the faster, smarter, better, whatever.
Oh, Peter Shankman.
I had Peter Shankman on recently.
Oh, Peter's great. Yeah.
But you've been on twice before, or you were not, that was the first time you were on talking about ADHD. Then I think we talked about, I know you were on and talked about resolutions.
Yeah. We were talking about resolutions.
That's
end
what
of
it was.
The year stuff. Yeah.
And that was the beginning of this year, or the very end of last year, which made me think to have you come on again this right now. But then you also came on earlier this year again, and we talked about you taking a productivity retreat.
Right.
And that was a great episode.
Retreat.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what you came back to talk about this time is our man crush on Todd Henry. No, just
Todd Henry. Oh my gosh.
So we didn't plan on talking about this, but I want to say this. Todd's been on the show twice before, and the second time he was on, he and I got to talking about U2 because we both love U2.
Yes.
As well as the fact that one of his friends did a bunch of the work on the giant video laser, whatever screen, technical anomaly that is the screen for the Songs of Innocence and Experience tour and the Songs of Experience and Innocence, or whatever we want to call it. They're going back out on the road again right now. But Todd and I started to geek out about that. But wait, there's more. The Joshua Tree tour that I went to twice this past year, they were in Indianapolis, and suddenly in Chipotle, Todd Henry walks in with his son and is like, Eric Fisher. And I'm like, hey, and one, he's strikingly handsome and more tall than I thought he would be.
Oh, yes. He is a giant man.
And then 2, he had just met Bono.
Oh,
so fits of jealous
rage. Was he glowing?
Yeah,
was he just like radiant Todd Henry?
He had the residual Bono radiation. So, yeah. And then we met again later in line, and then we were kind of near each other down on the general admission standing room only floor for the conference. It's like a conference. It really is.
Yeah.
It's church. Anyways, so it was fun. But then you have another story.
So I met Todd Henry at, I think it was like the 2nd or 3rd World Domination Summit. And I was just standing around and was talking to Josh Kaufman, who wrote the Personal MBA. And I'm just kind of like all these authors that I love. I'm like, how did I get here? And Todd Henry just kind of walks up. He's like, and I'm like, are you Todd Henry? And I was introduced to Todd Henry. This sounds a little strange. I spent time in Afghanistan for a year. And Afghanistan is a place where like you always want it to be boring, because if it's not, then you're in trouble.
Right.
So I got to read, like, I was like, I'm reading all the things. And I like read The Accidental Creative. I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? And I couldn't download his podcast because you can't download from Afghanistan very well. So because of all the, war things.
Sure.
So not really a great connection. So So he and I are talking, and at the World Domination Summit, they had asked people what goals or what dreams they have in the next 5-10 years. And they just like did like this fun video series that you think would just kind of be a montage at the end. Well, they selected, 3 or 4 people, and then they fulfilled those dreams. Like, guy wanted to write a book, and they sent him on a train, and they got him a book publisher and an agent to meet. And one guy wanted to teach how to take pictures or how to teach photography in India. So they got him all the equipment, and they got him a ticket. And so people were like, oh my gosh. So Todd Henry were talking about that, how they wish like, and maybe like youth pastor summits, they should do this for youth or pastors really struggling. And we were just having like this deep conversation at this like world domination party. And Todd Henry looked at me, he goes, I'm going to go dance now. And I'm like, me too. And like, we went our separate ways, like into this like massive crowd. And I was like, Todd Henry, everybody, Todd Henry. So I've managed to connect with him at like Tim Grohl's events, who does launch a bestseller and just some random things. And he's been a part of my work. So Todd Henry, if you're listening to this podcast, when you're done listening to this podcast, download the Excellent Creative and have your mind blown.
Yeah, there you go.
After you finish this podcast.
Yes, finish this episode
share it with your friends.
And we'll link it up in the show notes, and you'll be able to check that out.
Yes.
But Todd had some great advice in regards to seasons of life or annual seasons is, that you can't, one of the things we talk about in productivity all the time is basically it's avoiding burnout.
Right.
And we're on the brink of it all the time and just don't know it, I think, these days.
Yeah. Well, one of the most dangerous things about burnout is that a stage of it is when you go numb, like you don't realize it. And so now like you're still burning away and you're like, yeah, but I feel fine. It's like, no, your nerve endings, your mental nerve endings are like so shot they can't register pain anymore. And by the time they do, you're like, you're done.
You got to cut off a limb.
You've completely, we've all heard that story of, we're like, how did that guy burn out? He was doing just fine. And then he went from, 10 to 0 like that. Mm-hmm. And that's like, well, that's literally burnout you've gone too far. You've gone too far.
Yeah.
And I was listening to The Excellent Creative by the great Todd Henry, and he was talking about how, you have these seasons of productivity that if you start producing like a machine, your work will look like it was produced by a machine because it was produced by a machine. And I thought about that, and I'd probably spent the last 4 months. I launched a course. I'm trying to, I'm just trying to push all this content out on my blog and making sure everybody's happy. I'm not really checking in with myself, but, is everybody else happy? Does everybody else think I'm smart? And I just noticed, I'm like, man, I'm empty. I'm running on fumes here. Yeah. So this season that we're into, this winter, for those of you in California, it's when it gets cold and you have to stay in.
It is blowing. Well, you're in the Windy City,
right? Yes,
I'm in a flat plains area, and it's blowing pretty hard today.
It's right out today, and we're having a very super warm day. It's like in the 60s, but tomorrow it's in the 30s.
Yes.
So welcome to the Midwest.
Yeah.
So
I think this is that time of year though where it's almost a good thing for us to follow maybe the nature of the weather and the seasons, that you can't be on all year round and expect to be producing something that is of quality, or it will turn into a robot's work. Not to mention the machine will start to break down. Mm-hmm. So not only will the high quality stuff become just low quality, you'll then start to get to the point where you can't even function.
Right.
And you won't notice that till it starts to it's like that. You skip your oil change in your car for so long, and then suddenly it starts chugging, in other words, and it's at the worst possible time most of the time.
Yeah.
And this is that time of year where, ironically, things ramp up when they should be downshifting, like you've said.
Yeah. People in the holidays, they just push and make sure this is good and make sure Timmy gets the right gifts and and we just kind of fill it. And then what happens is there's like gap between like Christmas and New Year's where it's like people are like, oh, now what about my, resolutions and how am I going to change? And it's like, well, you're in this total frantic blitz out state. Of course you feel like you need to change. Like, it's all shipwrecked. Yeah. Because you burnt it out.
Even before being involved in the online entrepreneurial business, whatever you want to call it, world, I still felt that. I still felt expectations for December, super high. There's this gap then between, oh, that's done now, and, oh, crap, a new year.
Right.
And it's like this gap of freak out in the quiet of nothing's happening right now. I want to go sit and watch TV to numb myself.
Right. Yeah.
Or
eat like a plate of like Rice Krispie treats.
Oh gosh, that sounds
so good.
Pretty disgusting right
Todd
now,
Henry
in a weird way. But that's good. It's good for me to think that would actually sound disgusting, because that's my brain and my body coordinating to say, no, that's not who you should be anymore.
No,
I'm proud of that actually.
Yeah,
so,
good.
But so there's this Danish word that I thought was pronounced Hygge, and it's not. And you thought it was pronounced what? Hygge? Hygge. Kind of like a hookah, but not.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that it's Hygge.
That might be. I think you might be onto it.
Pick your pronunciation, but we'll go. You want to decide on which one we'll
go. I'll go Hygge.
Okay.
I'll go Hygge with you.
You know what? I think it's Hygge because Hugo is also a Danish name. So it's, and I have a lot of those in my mom's side of the family. So, but what is this word? What does this mean? Why is this perfect for us to be talking about right now?
Hygge is this Danish word about being comfortable, cozy, warm. It's like when it's raining outside and you have like this quilt on you and you're drinking like tea and you're reading a book and it's quiet. It's just like that comfortable feeling of like being in a cabin and just the world is kind of shut away somewhere and you're just enjoying time with family and friends. It could be just a quiet night of board games but like electronics aren't running the show. They're just, it's just a time to settle. And that's kind of the season we're in. And as I think about the season we're in, instead of like being this like producing gross machine, it's a time of just reflection, of intake. What I decided to do was like, I'm not going to write for, attempt anything profound for a good month. And I've noticed I can read more. I enjoy it. It's not for like, I'm reading this so I can write this. It's just, I'm reading this because I simply enjoy it. With this word, there's no like, I'm doing this so that later on I can XYZ. It's just, I'm here and I'm present. So,
yeah. So to me, it sounds like, and my interpretation of it is, it's like a feeding of the soul and the body. Even.
Yes.
Or let me put it differently. It's feeding of the soul, but you can feed your soul by feeding your mind or your spirit or your body, all the components that make up us as people, feeding all those components, and then that feeds your soul or something. I don't know. Anyway.
And it revolves around, and I would say it revolves around rest.
Yes.
Like, there's nothing, I'm not, grinding anything out. I'm not frantically writing notes. It's just very smooth and easy. It's very, and in the Danish culture, they try to cut down on electrical lights. We're just going to use candles.
Yeah.
The meals, they're usually in slow cookers. So you can just, hey, whenever you need to eat, whenever you need to drink, we put drinks out. It's kind of like, you're on your own, and in the most comfortable way. And I actually was thinking about this when you did that pub crawl.
Yes.
Productivity pub crawl. Part of that was, I'm with my friend and he's with me and we're doing this together. And so, when people, as we're, the show's about productivity, when I think of this, it's like, I've had friends invite me over and I'm like, oh, what are we going to do? We're just going to play board games and read. And I'm like, that sounds great. And there's no agenda. There's no like, there's soup on the stove and end of list. That's come as you are.
It's not about tackling some problem. It's not even about like passively watching a movie. It's about like enjoying each other's presence, whatever's happening.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
And I could sit and read a book. You could sit and read a book, and there's no, there's no agenda. It's an agendaless night, which I think in our holiday season, we kind of like, it's all agenda. It's all like, we got to make sure the presents are in this celebration. And it's, December birthdays. We got to take care of those. And so, yeah.
For somebody who's first coming across this concept, which they've had to have heard some of the components of this concept before, because I've talked about it on the show before with, in terms of rest or in terms of not, basically avoiding burnout, having a weekend, not working in the evenings, all these kinds of different components. But what we're talking about here is specifically taking a chunk of time out of the year and designating it as like, it's not that you're not doing the things you're responsible for. You're going to work, you're doing those things, but this is the time where you have especially cleared out the schedule in order to do this, in order to recharge without a purpose of then being more productive later. Although that is a benefit. It does happen. Right. It's not the goal, right?
Right. It's a time of reflecting inside, thinking about the year that has gone on, but just having that be a rest being a big component. Because the weather is literally, for most of us, telling us to slow down.
Yeah.
And rarely, it's like this season of you have permission to slow down, to enjoy that book, to rest and not have this crazy hyper life that sometimes we get addicted to. There's about a billion Medium articles that's like the word busy is like the new snob word. We're like, I'm busy. Like, I'm busy. I'm busier than you. It's like, when did this happen? Like, when did, ugh. So
I want to, my goal in life is to not be busy. Like I want to, I think of busy as being like crumbs inside of everything that I just want to sweep away and get out of my way, Right. That's what it feels like. It feels that if I had to have a tangible kind of or emotional feeling to having too many things on my calendar or too many things that I've said yes to that maybe aren't even on my calendar, they're like crumbs in my life I want to sweep away.
Yeah. And practical ways to kind of embrace this would be, people are like, I have like 6 kids. Like, how does this work? I have friends of mine and they're like, they go into what I call like slow cooker world for the next 2 months where they're like, everything is in a crock pot or, I have friends of mine who've got multiple ones and dinner is just like dinner's in the crock pot. There's bowls and spoons there. And they eat together or they just kind of slow it down. So it's not like this. We have to have everything be formal and let's, just kind of come as you are. And they eat around, maybe watch something, holiday-ish, or they just sit and chill but just kind of reducing all the things that go on because one, the weather doesn't cooperate with simple things anymore for a while. So, but that's one way is just kind of simplifying dinner.
Well, and that's one step of consciously lowering the expectations.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. One thing my late mother instituted was the day after Thanksgiving, you could not buy anything for yourself until like a holiday. And I was like, oh, but it like reduced like materialism and made you appreciate what you have. You did, it was like, it kind of cut me off from my, I think she was a minimalist at heart, my mother. So, but that was one way. And then just, allowing on the weekends, just making it, hey, let's sleep in. Let's not have a ton of activities during this time.
So I think another way that we could move forward with the Hygge,
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Hygge. There we go. That sounds good. Oh, anyway, Hygge, right?
Hygge.
That's what we said.
Yep.
Hygge, is, which may sound antithetical to what we were just talking about, but making lists, having checklists, kind of especially for us ADHD people.
Yes.
A guide, if you will. Like,
yes.
Whether that's a bare minimum of, okay, here are the things that, like, if I want to fully switch off, okay, here are the things that, like, still have to get done.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Or for somebody else who's they're frenetic and overactive, this is you paring it down to just this list. I
read the book by, I'm going to just destroy his name. I'm sorry, listeners. Atul Gawande.
Okay.
He wrote the Checklist Manifesto, and he's a surgeon, and it is about developing checklists in the hospital to reduce infection. So one hospital just had this outrageous, and whenever they do a central line into the chest, boom, there'd be, 30% of people were getting infections. And he's like, why? And so he developed a checklist, and then it went down to 0.5%. And you would just follow this step by step. And he gave all the power to the nurses to manage the checklist instead of the doctors, because they found the doctors were like, yeah, like, I don't need to wash my hands, whatever. So they run through this checklist, and then boom, look, people weren't dying in the hospital from a non-related incident, what got them there in the first place. So I was reading this and I was like, okay, how can I implement some checklists in my life? And I have a day off checklist. So I work retail, so it's kind of a weird schedule. So it's like I have Wednesday and Monday off. So I was like, it was hard for me to schedule these things. So I was like, I'm just going to make a day off schedule. And my day off, I run through this checklist of all the things to do. Tidy the house, write. I'm a writer, write 1,000 words, because when I get up, I'm exhausted and I don't want to come up with what I have to do. Yeah. I don't want to, all I have to do is just on my Evernote, is look at this checklist and run through it. And by the end, now you're like, oh, how long is this checklist? It's about 8 things, 9 things. And at the end of it, I can look around the house and it doesn't look like a fraternity has been staying in my apartment. I've shopped for the day, I've done adult things, but yes. We're like, can't you just know those things? I'm like, no, as a gentleman with ADHD, my brain doesn't have a really good, reminder. I have to outsource it. So there's this checklist. I've done it when I'm not tired, and I'm like, at the end of the day, what do I want to do? And then I have a checklist that's like days I work. And so I get up about 7. I usually work at noon, and it's a briefer checklist, but it's like, hey, make sure you pack your lunch, and get that done. And that helps me do that. But any process that I repeat more than 3 times, I try to generate a checklist, a travel checklist. And you can find these on the internet. Like this isn't like this newest, hottest thing is like a list.
What is this checklist you speak of?
Tell me more. For $19.99, but a travel checklist, but I kind of make it my own because that's how I roll. But and it's helped me out a lot just to offload the amount of like brain power. It's like, well, I'm just gonna do this. I have a financial one where it's like once a month I have a reminder that kicks out that says financial checklist. I hit a button and it's like, check your retirement, check your this, and then I'm done. And I know I'm kind of on board with that.
Yeah. I think that for a lot of people out there, so they're thinking, okay, so I need to make a holiday checklist. I need to do what Santa does, is make a list and then check it twice. And I think, and here's the thing, like the holidays naturally add in more expectation and more things to do. Mm-hmm. But if we have this checklist and it's out of sight, out of mind, and less stressful to us because we've then outsourced it, even if we're not ADHD, half the time we're acting like it because of our devices. But if we have it outsourced and out of our mind, and we're not constantly thinking, oh, I have to remember to go get this person's gift, or I have to this, or this person needs a dinner made for them. And, I said I'd do that. Like, if all that stuff is stored away in an out of your head thing, you're automatically going to get the benefit of exercising less mental RAM and moving more towards the Hygge. But also, say then, oh, you know what? I'm going to take 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm going to then knock as many of those things on that list out, or take a moment and prioritize the list and then knock a bunch out, and then suddenly breathe a sigh of relief because the stuff's getting done.
Right.
Or ask for help. Something we don't often do.
Outsourcing that is pretty wise. Like, I've done it where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to kind of put some money aside, freelance a little bit, and I'm going to have someone take care of the house cleaning during the holiday season, so I don't have to worry about it. I've had at the church I went to for a long time, the youth would do fundraising. They would do they'll wrap your presents. And I was like,
oh, that's amazing.
That's amazing. And I'm like, here you go, nerds. And I would just push those gifts. And then, a couple hours later, I'd come back and behold. And I actually didn't, like, if a 5-year-old wrapped it, they would do a better job than I would. So I was like, oh, I bless you and your house. So
same here. I can't wrap a present to save my life, but
So if you can offload anything during this holiday season, go to the strengths. Like, someone's really good at this. Please feel free to do that. And or if you're really good at something, offer it. Like, kind of take that in if you enjoy it. If you enjoy if you enjoy wrapping presents, please be a blessing to those around you. Like me and Aaron.
So what's funny was literally this morning I was sitting at my son's kindergarten school with my mother-in-law and my wife to watch his, cutie little Christmas program thing for 20, 25 minutes. And it was funny when I was listening to them talk, and they were sitting there talking about, my house. Oh gosh. Forgive me if you listen to this. They don't, but, they were both talking about our houses are both a mess. And I've often said, like, what is cool is they both will actually have no problem cleaning the other person's house, but we don't want to do our own.
Right.
And I'm like, take a half hour, go over there and, swap the cleaning and just get it done, do a quick tidy or whatever. And, in our case, like, we've got some stuff in the garage that needs to be figured out where it goes still after moving into a house back in April, but still you wouldn't, there is an untapped resource of trading tasks with someone else.
Oh yeah.
And not feeling like it's your thing you're doing, but you're doing a favor for somebody else and vice versa. And like, even you could do that with meal swapping. Like, oh, I'm going to make you guys dinner tonight. Cool. And I'll do it for you tomorrow night, or vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
Or even double batching it. Like, that'd be amazing. Absolutely. Anyway.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things that, like, and there again, feeding of the soul through the feeding of the body and the companionship, etc.
Yep.
So,
you could have everybody over for a gift wrapping party, and you're all together, you're all doing it. Sharing that resource, having, making that a thing instead of everybody doing it by themselves. So,
How do you then suggest is there a way to come out of this? Or, January is still pretty cold around here, even February. Like, we're talking kind of predominantly holiday stuff here, but I want to say, like, what if you what if you literally said, no, the weather outside, gosh, it's frightful. I was going to say, and then I thought, am I going to really say it? And I did.
Yeah. No.
And and now I'm going to say, and the fire is so delightful.
But
anyways, this season, even though the quote holiday season passes pretty quickly, the season of being able to have the weather indicate, depending upon where you are, that you should be dormant and recharging and not trying to have fruit come off of you if you were a metaphorical plant. For an extended period of time, have you done that before, more than just, say, December? I haven't really, but I want to.
I haven't done a lot of launches or written like a book in January and like, look what I did. But I think it's the nature of, I do most of my reading probably December through February. I burn through books because I don't want to go outside. I make a conscious effort to like say, here, the next 5 books I'm reading. Once I finish one goes to the bottom of the stack. And it's more, I kind of balance it out between fiction and nonfiction. When I hear people are like, oh, fiction's a waste of time, I'm like, well, you're a monster is my response.
You watching a lot of TV there, buddy? Yeah.
Oh, you're out there. You know who you are. So
Yes.
read some fiction, people. But yeah, and I just make notes. And I think what that does is it feeds us. And then later on in March and April, the thaw hits. I've done all this quote research where now I'm like, I have like some creative currency to spend where I'm like, I've done this reading. I've thought about this. And writing becomes much easier. It's much more joyful instead of this like, come on, I need a new idea. Like even my audience isn't like, yeah, we just want to, December, January, February. You don't need to send us a ton of emails on being productive. It's literally like, we want to hear from you once or twice, once a week, maybe every other week. I'm like, great. But they like to ratchet it up March, April, May and go from there. So
I just had this mental picture of you can't draw water from a frozen well.
Right.
And if it's the weather is ice outside, then there's nothing to draw from.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you couldn't metaphorically pour more water into the well by reading, and then when it's time, like it all thaws out and you've got an excess. You're ready
full.
To like, the pump has been primed, kind of a thing. So yeah. I dare somebody out there to try this. I dare that. In fact, I'm kind of daring myself to do this.
Yeah.
To say no, explicitly take December-ish, and I know we're already into the month, but take December-ish into, say, till the time it's about spring, and don't do new things. Don't, and that kind of goes antithetical to what some people say in terms of, and what even you say when we're talking about resolutions when you've been on the show before, but that doesn't mean stop going to the gym. No, it means still go, like still do.
Oh yeah.
The ritualistic stuff that is good for you.
Yeah.
But it means stop running at a breakneck pace at all times, slow down for a while, and take a look around.
Yeah.
See where you are.
Grab some books that have been sitting on your shelf and start to enjoy them. Like just kind of recharge, and you're like, and Eric, I get stuck in this. I'm like, well, I'm just doing this for me. Like, aren't I a hedonist? Aren't I just a selfish monster if I'm doing this for my enjoyment only, and it doesn't produce income or prestige later on? Like, no, like, just sit in the recliner, drink some tea, and enjoy, and if you're like, yeah, but I need permission, listener, you have permission. Eric and I grant you permission to relax and just ratchet it down a couple notches. Like literally the world will not fall apart.
Productivity as a word has this whole producing connotation to it. And the problem with that is then it makes you feel like to be productive, I have to constantly be producing. And that's just not true.
No.
So I dare you, like if you can, as you're listening to this, think of ways that you can do some Hygge. Oh, God.
Sure. Yes.
Hygge. There we go. It's like a mantra. Anyway, if you can figure out some ways to do that in your world for your own sake, to take care of yourself, like, almost say, look, I'm sick for the next 3 months. How would I act differently?
Yeah.
And do that self-care for yourself, not for anybody else, but everybody else will benefit too if you do it.
Yep.
So, Ryan, it's been awesome talking with you.
So great.
It's always good. And we've still never seen each other in person. We've seen each other in video and all that kind of stuff. Yes. But anyways, I guess at some point we'll have to make sure a conference aligns. So.
Yes. And if your listeners want like more information, I'll set this up little page. Just I'm at the ADHDnerd.com/beyond. And
nice.
Some goodies about what we've talked about today. And I would love, if you want to check that out.
Sweet. I'll link it up in the show notes. It's theadhdnerd.com/beyond. Ryan, thanks for being on the show again.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Could you use some Hygge in your life? I know I could. It's honestly what you've been hearing me talk about over and over again in different ways, from different angles, with lots of different people for a while now, over the past, not just this year, but years. And in fact, in other upcoming episodes. I always have fun talking with Ryan. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If this hit home for you in some way, shape, or form, please think of that person who also should listen to this episode and forward this on to them in whatever way is possible. Share it while you're on your smartphone now. Type it in on your iMessage or your texting, or share it on social or private social messages some way to them. Let them know about this episode. Also, make sure to support this show by checking out the sponsors for this episode. Formstack.com/beyond. You can get a free trial as well as 25% off your first 3 months with Formstack. That's formstack.com/beyond. ZipRecruiter. Go post on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ziprecruiter.com/beyond. And FreshBooks. Again, I dare you to make more money in 30 days with their trial than without it. Go to freshbooks.com/TODO and enter Beyond the To-Do List in the How Did You Hear About Us section to let them know I sent you and support this show. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you get some Hygge in your life, and I will see you next episode. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at noodle.mx.